So, in the same book of yours, and because we have so many women in attendance today, Manisha has said that women should never be apologetic about being ambitious. So, I would like to ask you, why do you think that most women feel that they owe an apology to their family for being ambitious?
Well, I think this can be possibly attributed to the cultural, social biases and the mindsets that we have. But here you have the example of Manisha Girotra, who is herself such a fabulous example of breaking that stereotype. And we need such role models in society so that we move away from these kind of limiting beliefs that women have. So, people around you tend to impose on you because actually, if you see, I don't think women really lack ambition, because if you see in your school, college, and those stages, there are innumerable times when you see women performing so much better than boys, in their board exams or later in college. And even when they come into the corporate life, the data shows that at the entry level, women and men, the number is equal when they enter the workforce. It's only,
Right.
it tapers as you grow further in your career because of various reasons, which is, child care, elder care, and all of that. So I think the ecosystem has to improve so that the ambition of women doesn't take a backseat, because ambition is important for taking the society forward to achieve greater, bigger things. And when we have role models, then I think that really works as a big motivation for other women also. And then you don't have to sort of justify anything or answer anything, because people have already gone ahead of you and proved it by example. Like if you look at Kiran Bedi, it was not too long back. It was just in the 70s, 1972, that she joined the IPS services as the
True.
first woman IPS officer. And today, if
Right.
anybody is joining IPS, do we ever ask as many questions as we ask Kiran Bedi? That how it's kind of just taken as normal for a woman to
Yeah.
choose the service, as an IPS. And same is
Right.
happening in the space corporate sector also, where many women are coming forward and they are heading organizations. And world over, if you see the FTSE 500 companies, I think that record is the last company to have a woman on their board. I think that has already been achieved. And I think India has
Wow.
still a long way to go, that we need, even though we have a company law in place, which mandates that we have to have an independent woman director on every company board, but I think we
Right.
need to accelerate that process. So it is everyone's responsibility that we break these stereotypes and break these, mindsets and barriers. And women, can be, there should not be any gender discrimination as far as ambition is concerned. A man can be less ambitious and a woman can be more ambitious, or a woman can be less ambitious, a man can be more. It's just a human trait, just anybody but we need to have that ecosystem where women can fulfill their ambition. That is important.
Totally, totally. And may more women with ambition lead the way for other women to follow. And on that note, I would like to, do a loud cheer for Ehsas women of Raipur for bringing this session together.
Absolutely.
So, congratulations, dear women of Raipur. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Like Angela has already talked about the 4 books that you have written. What I've realized is that all the 4 books revolve around personalities. Personalities who are famous, personalities who are successful. So, as a writer, what is the kind of effort does it take to tell someone else's life story? Because it's a huge responsibility, and also you have to be very, very sensitive. So, yeah, what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's right. That when you set out to, do any task like this, absolutely, as you rightly said, Swati, there is a huge responsibility that you carry with you, and this is not a frivolous thing that you can just put any story together. You have to do proper research. You have to be disciplined. You have to put in all the effort, and it sort of just takes over your entire life, and you are like you get totally consumed by the whole passion. And
Right.
it's a combination of it's a mixed feeling of that pain, and you want that pain because it gives you pleasure, because you are at the end of it producing something which you're really happy about, because you're
Right.
exploring a certain part of the way society functions, because all my books are on different themes. And the
Yes.
idea of behind every book is exploring a particular theme, whether It is women who reach leadership positions in business, which is the first book. Or the second is on unconventional careers, that how people take a leap of faith, and choose careers after their calling. And the third is delving into the lives of Bollywood directors to understand how the ecosystem functions. And the fourth book, What After Money and Fame, about how do you say what is a life well lived? Is it money, fame, or is it things beyond that?
Right. Wow. All four of these topics are so interesting to talk to. I'll come on each one of them, but like you just mentioned, the second topic, it deals about, or it talks about unconventional life stories, right? So, and the likes of Harsha Bhogle, people who have come from very successful academic backgrounds, pass outs from IIMs, but they chose a different career midstream. So, what do you think made them do that? And what's your take on that?
Yeah, so my take on that is basically, I think it is living your truth, which is very important. And it is basically to do what you like is freedom, and to like what you do is happiness. And that is the tagline of the book also. And yeah, that is the tagline of My Life, My Rules. So I think we have only one life, and we should not sort of limit ourselves. And to think of it, if Harsha Bhogle had not taken the decision, we wouldn't have had such a fantastic commentator in the history of cricket.
Totally.
And he's one such person who's not actually played cricket really at national or international level, but he excels at what he does. And similarly, there are stories like R. Madhavan is covered in that book. And R. Madhavan would have been an electronics engineer, and such a waste of the talent if you look at it, and the kind of a fine actor that he is. Our defense minister, late Shri Manohar Parrikar, I covered him. I went to Goa and I met him a couple of times, and I wrote his story also. So he's an IIT graduate, but he chose to pursue his ambition to be in politics. And I think people do admire his simplicity and the way he made a mark in politics. So if, or Krishnamacharya Shrikant for that matter, he would have probably also been an engineer and not a cricketer. And the World Cup experience, they brought the World Cup in Kapil Dev's team to India. So if these people had not taken that leap of faith, how would they have experienced the life which was meant to be for them? So what I feel is that if that pull is very strong in you, and you really are driven by that energy, I think you can always connect the dots backwards. So, and there is no life without taking that risk, which brings you so much happiness and fulfillment. Because at the end of the day, the objective of any human life is fulfillment of one's potential, the highest potential that one has. So if that is your calling, I think it's definitely, my take is that it's definitely worth taking that path.
What a wonderful way to put it. Like living your truth really matters. Amazing. Amazing to hear about it. Okay, so my next question is, people say that the biggest strength of a fiction writer is to build inspiring characters. But you being a non-fiction writer, I think so non-fiction writers have a bigger onus, because they are talking about already existing personalities, and they have to, crunch the stories from thousands of reels to a few pages. So how does it, feel like to do the character building through your words?
It is very fascinating because this is all in-depth work. You do a lot of research on it, and you try to understand the personality of the individual and the various facets, of their personal life, their highs, their lows, and what drives them, what motivates them, what is the kind of background, that environment from which. I think that is basically the introductions of my books pretty much describe it. That I really like to get into those details, that what is the motivation of a person to do what one does? What are the various dilemmas one faces in life? How do you take decisions in those situations? And or like, when Naina Lal Kidwai, she was talking to me and sharing her professional journey and personal journey with her. So when she mentioned that she was pregnant and how she had to take a flight, and till the very last minute of her pregnancy, she was in office, she was working. And it's just amazing that the kind of dedication, and there are various stories which you come across, when you're meeting people. And so the whole objective being that this just broadens your perspective. It gives you a bigger vision. And nobody's life can actually, you cannot actually walk in their footsteps. Everybody's life is going to be different. It's going to be unique. But at least, you have a window into another person's life, that what path they have walked. And maybe you can draw some insights from their journey for your own and make your own deductions.
Beautifully said, beautifully put. Indeed, hopefully we are all able to do it. And with writers like you, I think so it gives us much more inspiration. Okay, so we all know you are from Mumbai, and for that reason, it is quite believable that you chose to write about Bollywood. But you chose to write about the captains of the ship, like you have rightfully described, that is the directors of the movies, rather than people who are very popular, that is actors or actresses. Why did you do so?
Yeah, so I think a question has the answer also in it. That directors are actually the captains of the ship. They are the ones who have an idea of every department of the making of the film. My whole idea was not to skim the surface just through the actors, but to go deep and understand that how the whole film is put together. And in fact, in my book, in Decoding Bollywood, Nandita Das is also one of the persons who I had interviewed. And Nandita Das happens to be an actor first and a director later. So later she directed a movie called Firak, and then recently Manto she has directed. So I think this question, what you asked me, is very nicely answered, because I asked the same question to Nandita also, that what is their experience as an actor and as a director. So I'd just like to read a few lines if we have time.
Sure.
So what I had asked her is that what is Nandita's takeaway from direction after starting out as an actor? So she replies that direction is a different experience altogether. It's the most challenging thing I have ever done. For me, it was a coming together of all my passions, and was almost like a spiritual journey. You deal with so many people. It's as if you take on the role of a parent. As actors, you're only privy to your part of the shoot, which is a small sliver of the filmmaking process. So this is what she has to, it's a small sliver. As an actor or an actress, it's just a tiny part that, you are touching on. So by interacting with the directors, you get a far bigger picture.
Interesting. And like the title of your book goes, Decoding Bollywood, I think so it was important for you to get a far bigger picture. Interesting.
Absolutely.
But yeah, talking about that book, I would like to ask, were you really able to understand how this industry functions? And because I'm asking this particularly in the context of media portrayal of the death of SSR, that is Sushant Singh Rajput, and it is being discussed for more than months now. So what do you think? How does this industry function?
Yeah, you do understand a lot of nuances, how the industry functions, and nepotism is being talked so much. And when you go deeper into the relationships that are there, it is written in the introduction to my book in Decoding Bollywood, that how various people are actually so, when you go deeper into the subject, you realize what are the connections, how Manish Malhotra is, connected, is actually related to, I think Karan Johar's family or something like that. So various connections. Right. So anybody, you see that you go deeper into the, even this person, Siddharth Malhotra, is also related to Manish Malhotra, and in turn to, Dhawan's family and all of that. So the deeper you go into the subject, you realize that there are connections. It's like on certain, there is a certain platform which people need to, make themselves. I'm not saying people who don't have any connections with the film world, they don't make it big here. They do, but there are struggles involved. And one thing which people very quickly understand is that fame is really fickle. And whatever, another thing which is very, very important about the glamour world is that your glorification is public and your humiliation is also public. And it is very, very difficult to deal with humiliation. So what is important here is, you earn a lot of money, but you kind of spend also a lot, because there is a certain image you have to keep. So financial prudence becomes very important that, and it is important for all individuals, but for actors, it is even more important because, you have to have staying power to be able to live in the city and to make a career. And the most important thing is equanimity. I think along joining acting schools, most newcomers do that. A very important thing for them also is to learn how to keep their head, not let success go to their head and not let failure go to their heart. So that equanimity becomes very important to sustain in the industry.
Interesting, really interesting. Yeah, I think so. That's really important. And I would like to quote one of the statements that you used in your answer to quote my next question. You said fame is really fickle, at least in case of Bollywood industry. Now, I would like to bring your attention to the most favorite title of mine from all the 4 books of yours, and that is What After Money and Fame. That's your most recently written books. So I think so. The title of the book is a question in itself. So if you could please elaborate on that, I would be really grateful.
What After Money and Fame is the 4th book, and it came after I had done the success stories, in corporate divas with the, leadership in the corporate world. Then how people, the creative fields from music, people who are chefs, who are politicians, what is life like for them in the 18 unconventional careers. Then the glitz and glamour of Bollywood world that was ticked off. And finally, after all the success stories, you come to the juncture that what lies beyond all of this. So that is the reason that I started to work on this theme, and I covered 12 leading individuals and also very well respected in their domains, whether they are billionaires or doctors or lawyers. I've chosen basically a person from each field and covered 12 stories. So we have the stories of Adi Godrej, Ajay Piramal, Amit Chandra, Anu Aga, Hafiz Contractor, who's a brilliant architect, Harish Salve, famous lawyer, Javed Akhtar, Jayant Sinha, who was a finance minister then. From the field of music, I have Kavita Seth covered in the book. Dr. Naresh Trehan is there. Mr. Narayan Murthy is covered in the book. Then Rashesh Shah of Edelweiss. So these are the 12 stories which are done. And it was really a matter of honor and privilege for me that it was Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla who wrote the foreword to the book. And I think his foreword also says a lot about what the book is about. So if you want, I can read it, or depending on how much time we have.
Yeah, well, we want to throw the floor open for some more questions, but I think so we can take 5 more minutes of your time. So if you could read it.
Okay, so I'll just read a small portion of what he's written about What After Money and Fame, how he begins. So he says that What After Money and Fame is an interesting and unusual read. It goes beyond the boundaries of business, delving into soft issues that at some point in time transcend materialism and forge ahead to explore what actually constitutes success. Is it power, fame, and money, all of which may be transient depending on the vicissitudes of time and the environment? What is the deeper meaning of life? So that's how he goes on, that these are the searching questions which are asked in the book. And, they represent a tapestry ranging from corporates to first generation entrepreneurs to professionals, creative people, doctor, architect, and so on. And their vocations and pursuits seem like diverse. And, the further on how he felt about the subject is what he's written. So at the end of it, it is basically elevating your thought pattern to a higher level of thinking beyond materialism. That's the objective of the book.
Beautiful objective and beautifully written book, I'm pretty sure. So like we could understand from the conversation by far, and this would be my last question because I don't want to be the only one asking questions from you today. There are so many others who are waiting in queue, right? So like you have covered so many successful personalities, people who are in the top of their game in different industries. So what do you think? What makes people successful? And also, how often does success and happiness come together? Because, in one of your interviews, you have also quoted that you like to cover the human part of a success story. So if you could explain all those three together.
So what constitutes success? At the beginning of the interview also, I said the 3 Ps, I categorized it under that. And within those 3 Ps, I think there are many more that you can have, that, how much patience you need on your path, how much conviction you need, and then prioritization, which is so important in current time, when you are so distracted by so many. So it is like you have to really want it very, very bad, that you are able to just put aside everything else, and that becomes the focus for you, what you want to achieve in life. So that becomes important. And these are the various ingredients, and of course luck matters. But here I would like to just say, there is a very nice quote which says, let me just read that. कोशिश भी कर, उम्मीद भी रख, रास्ता भी चुन, इसके बाद थोड़ा मुकद्दर तलाश कर. So what it is that you have to put in your best, and then luck will play whatever it has to. So, so all these things, and then, the ecosystem, as I mentioned, is also very important, which should support your cause and, give you that push, that thrust to go forward. So these are the various things. And what was the second part of your question? That
like, how often does success and happiness come together? These are the things which make, people successful, but does success and happiness come together?
Yeah. So I think that's very important, that you have to be, it's like you have to be very mindful. It has to be a very mindful living. And because the line which differentiates the two is very thin. And so you have to be constantly aware, that you have to take care of, and particularly this COVID has really brought it into focus, that how it is important to, take care of your fitness, your health, because very often it happens that, you have a burnout, and then you sit and think that, is this all really worth it? There are many authors writing a book. Algebra of Happiness is the latest book, I think, which has come out, which talks about the first 20 years of your life, you burn out, and then the next 20 years, you are just, sitting there trying to mend things, what have gone wrong. So the right way of doing things is that, I think that balance is very important. So, and that balance for human beings at every stage of life remains very, excess of everything is bad. So whether it is even fame, money, if you don't manage things properly, then it can be a double-edged sword, actually. It can end up, instead of giving happiness, it can take away all your happiness. So, and so this is one of my favorite quotes by Mr. Narayan Murthy, when he says that when you talk about money, so you have to make sure that money, don't make money your master. You should make money your slave. And for that, you need to be very mindful. And you need to be, because some basics of life, will always remain fundamentally important. And I think with this COVID, we have all looked very much inward, and we've all realized what is the value of money, what is the value of fame, what is the value of relationships, and what is the value of, that care, taking care of ourselves, of each other. So I think with success, you need to have balance, really, to enjoy happiness on a long-term basis.
Totally. What a beautiful way to put it. Make money your slave, and maybe then, you could enjoy success, happiness, and money all together. Beautifully said. It was such an amazing experience talking to you today, Sonia. I have 100 more questions that I want to ask you today, but possibly I'm not allowed to. And also, I want to give the opportunity to so many other people who have joined us today to ask you questions. So over to you, Shrishti. Let's, I'll throw the floor open for more questions. Thank you so much for your answers.
So we are open for a short Q&A session. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, and thereafter I'll unmute you for your questions to, so that you can ask the question.
Perfect.
Please raise your hand, or you can type out the question in the chat box and I'll read out the question.
So I think so while other questions come up, Shrishti, am I allowed to ask one more question, which I'm very curious about?
Yes, please go ahead.
Right. So I wanted to ask, we talked about COVID, Sonia. So how has COVID-19 affected, your life as an author, as a businesswoman in general?
Yeah. So I think this has been such a dramatic event in all of our lives, not just in India, but world over, globally.
Right, right.
It is something which is a great leveler, and for the first time in human history, all of us are going through that collective experience, so to say. We have the same language all over the world that people understand and speak now, whether it is lockdown or whether it is testing and all of that related to, and the emotions that we've experienced during this period, that how all of us have felt afraid, how all of us have been terrified, nervous, and the coming together of people through music. We've connected with people in Italy who came to their balconies, and some similar experience happened in India. And there are some stark images which will always remain etched in our memories, whether it is the Easter concert of Andrea Bocelli, which happened in a Milan cathedral, deserted cathedral. I think that's such a telling picture
Huge
of
thing,
what
yeah.
was happening. Or a Times Square when you see flashed on TV screen, empty streets. And then, of course, the animals and birds just having their,
Time
the
of their
sheep
life.
walking the cities and the deer on the beach. And it's a very collective experience all of us have had. So I think the most important takeaway from this particular event is going to be really, I think, care is going to emerge as the top human emotion, that we have to take care of our health. We have to take care of the people around. The world is nothing without people. And we've seen that outpouring of kindness. And, I'm working with phenomenal people right now in Bombay who are working on the ground. And the kind of charity which is coming through from people, they are seeing that nobody goes hungry, and people are paying their house helps and other staff, whether, obviously none of them are coming to work. And never in human history you have seen any outpouring of, care and love for the community to this level. So that is one thing. And then also the transient and the fragility of life that is so much in our face right now, that we also feel that this is the moment, we have to seize the moment. And gratitude, which is so top of the mind for every individual. I think every morning we wake up and we say that thank God that, you have given us another day, and for taking care of our loved ones and all of that. So as a writer, I think all of this is going to come out in our works, in the, whatever writing is being done now. And the other thing it gives, I'm so happy for the time it has given me to really catch up on reading. And I'm just delighted with the joy that reading is bringing to me. It's literally that dialogue that there is more treasure in books than in all the loot on the pirates, treasure island, as it is said. So how they speak to you, how they befriend you, the books, what kind of magic they create, and there's so much of learning. It's constant learning that you can have just with something which doesn't speak, but speaks so loud to you through the words, coming through centuries. It's not just the current. You pick up, and particularly, I just want to read, it's a very thick book, Henry David Thoreau's Walden, when he had, gone into wilderness for 2 years, and then he wrote this book. And that was because of the urbanization he was upset with in US, and to live life in its very raw form, so that you feel, and that's the life we are living right now, actually, with everything we got to do on our own. So I think it's a lot of, it's touching you at the core, as you said, the human aspect of it. So, how much you want to hug your friends and loved ones, how much you want to shake hands with people, how much you're missing all of that. And you're realizing that fundamentally human beings need society, they need tribe, they need to be with each other. And we never felt that need more than we are feeling in this period right now. So hope we come out of it with some good learnings, and, we don't end up bringing the 6th extinction upon ourselves. As they say that 5 times the earth has already been extinct, and it is the 6th time which will happen in billions or whatever. So at least we should not accelerate the process, and we should do all we can to,
So
Yes.
we have a few questions. I'll take 3 to 4 as the time allows. The first question is by Apra. Which is your favorite story out of the 12 stories?
Out of 12 stories and what after Money and Fame?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so difficult to say, Apra. It's such a difficult question, you know. Because I think I have very carefully chosen all the people, and to write these stories you have to be really committed, and you enjoy. It's like you can't say that which is your favorite child. All everything that you've written, it's come from your heart, and you've just loved every story for one reason or the other. Godrej is the first person to whom I'd written about this concept. I was really delighted to, get him to participate in the book when his email came that he was keen to participate. And it's a very different perspective he brings to the whole, compared to all others. I think his perspective is very different, where he says that, the corporate social responsibility, CSR and all that is not so much after his heart, as much as he wants to grow the business even bigger and bigger. So it was interesting that even, it's not always that people talk about service and devotion and, all of that. So even this is a factor which can keep going, can be the driving force of your life. So I loved Ajay Piramal's story because of the overarching influence of Gita, Bhagavad Gita, that is there in his life, and how so much of his actions are driven by Gita's philosophy. And even on the walls of his office, he's got Gita shlokas inscribed. So it was very interesting to see that.
So the next
I
question
think,
is,
yeah.
yes, ma'am, please continue.
Yeah, so that's where I am. So it's a difficult question to answer for me.
Definitely, it would be.
So the next question is from Joyita, and she is asking, what would you advise the millennials who are ready to embark on corporate journey, especially while dealing with workplace biases?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I couldn't get the question.
What would you advise the millennials who are ready to embark on the corporate journey, especially while dealing with the workplace biases?
Okay, is there any more detailing on workplace biases? Because the millennials are, I think, a far evolved generation. And as far as the gender differences, I don't think they believe in it. As far as even the ambition question which went, I think the millennials don't look at it as a girl or a boy thing. And actually the problem is that the millennials are not ready to upset the work-life balance, and they want to have best of both worlds. So, and it's not like only the girls or the boys, it's both. When we talk about millennials, we are talking gender neutral. So as far as environment is concerned, I think they're very conscious, and they do take care. They don't want to own cars. They don't want to, and it is just pre-COVID, the world we were living in is the world of Airbnb, and it's a world of Uber, Ola, where you don't really need to own anything. It's like, everything is on a temporary basis. So workplace biases, I'm not sure what exactly, if I would need more elaboration on, what exactly is asked.
Well, the question written there is
Yeah.
just that, but if you'd like, I can move to the next question. So the next question is by Ansel, and she's asking, what success mantra would you like to share with the youth today when it comes to pursuing their passions and fulfilling their dreams?
Pursuing passion and fulfilling dreams, let one not be very impulsive about it. You should have a good assessment and that assessment comes from the kind of success you get with your passion. There is enough feedback which comes from your environment, and you can pretty much figure out that this is the thing which is something extraordinary about you. And then if you're convinced, I think just go all out and just be very, at the end of the day, what matters in life is that you should be very comfortable in your own skin. You should live your truth, because if you're living something else which doesn't come naturally to you, I think you are going to be miserable. So it is very much worth attempting the path which is the call of your soul.
Right.
Right.
So another question by Apra. If you had to write story at this time, the Corona times, whose lives would you have chosen to write on?
Yeah, so that's interesting because my publishers have been after me, and because this is the time that there is another book which is pretty much. I think every book has its time, and now I feel I'm ready with the subject. I'm already working on it, and so I would just like to. Keep it confidential at the moment, but I can promise you that that's going to, throw perspective on something which is very important to the fabric of the country, which is very, which is going to give huge insights into the way our country functions.
Wow.
Okay.
So eager.
Yeah. So last question, then we'll move to voter thanks. Last question is by Kirti, and she is asking, have you ever written fiction? If not, then why?
Well, no, I'm not so much of a fiction person and really admire people who can write fiction, but no, fiction is not my cup of tea. I'm very much grounded in reality and I just love to explore, what's around me. And there are so many things to be understood and so many things to be, that I don't want to get into the world of fantasy. But, and for that matter, in fact, as far as my reading habits also go, I'm more a non-fiction person, and I kind of don't have that much inclination for fiction.
Right. Now,
Except poetry. I love poetry, so poetry is
of
like very close to my heart.
course.
See,
So,
before Achal could take over, I
yeah,
had one last question which I'm very curious to ask. So, if I could please ask that.
sure, please, quickly.
Yeah. So, Sonia, what kind of responsibility do you think influential personalities hold in the shaping of the society? And like you rightly said, you would be covering the fabric of the country in your upcoming book. So, influential personalities, be it actors, sports personalities, or for that matter, writers like you. How important or unimportant do you think it is for these people to be politically correct?
Um, yeah, so when the personalities have an influence on people, then it is certainly a responsibility on your shoulders, and you need
Right.
to be sensible about things that you do, and it should not be foolhardy. And as far as political correctness is concerned, I feel it is more important to be correct than politically correct. So you, again, I believe that you should speak the truth. You should be on the side of what is right. And it's not necessary, it should be politically correct. What is necessary, it should be correct.
Wow. That's such an amazing answer. Thank you so much, Sonia. Over to you, Ajil.
Thanks, Vasu.
Just a sec. So now I'd like to invite Anchal for the vote of thanks.
So once again, very good evening to you all. I hope you enjoyed this session today. I'd like to take a moment and extend my sincerest thanks to Prabha Khetan Foundation for curating such invigorating literary and artistic series of events. Before I move on, since I think time would permit, ma'am, could I have a request? Could you take one of your books and just recite your favorite instance para excerpt for us? Because I think time is
Okay.
permitting, so why not, make it take
Oh.
advantage of that?
Okay.
If that's okay.
Okay. So I never even actually thought it like that. And there's been some time that I read my own books. So
Anything that you'd like to share with us, ma'am?
yeah, just give me a little time so that I can.
Maybe more specific to women, because I think we have a lot of women in the audience today, a majority of women.
Yeah.
I'm really thankful to the audience today. They've been very patient and listening very intently. I'm sure they enjoyed the session. And that's why we
Yeah,
want
so, you know,
something more.
I would like to read what basically Amit, there is an investment banker by the name of Amit Chandra. I don't know whether you all have heard about him. And he basically donates more than 90% of his wealth to social causes. And he's been doing it for a long time. And his role model is Chuck Feeney. If I don't know whether you've heard about Chuck Feeney also. And so I think there is some very good amazing thought process that comes through the way he lives his life. It's an example, and like Bill Gates has that promise by the billionaires to donate their wealth. So Amit and a friend of his, they are also running an organization, Living My Promise, where they're getting more and more individuals, even from middle class backgrounds, to donate 50% of their wealth to the development of the society. So I think what I would just like to read something from his chapter that explains that how, So he says that my hope is that India evolves into a society which is far more equitable and responsible, and that has significantly lower levels of suffering than today. I think we have more severely disadvantaged people in our country than probably in most parts of the world put together, somewhere around 300 to 400 million. Look at the problems these people face. You can either treat this as an opportunity or you can treat it as an imperative, but you cannot ignore it. The imperative is that all of us who can do something about this should begin, however small. If each individual gets engaged, I think it would be far more valuable than the government or some philanthropist doing some big things. So my hope is that individually, a lot more people get connected to society around them as opposed to becoming comfortably numb and living in a cocoon. I think that is a takeaway, particularly in the COVID situation, that I think we need to be very clear that we are in it, all of us together. And equality is not just important, it is probably the only way we can survive in future. You cannot have some people poor and some people extremely rich, because as we know that if Corona happens, it doesn't see rich, poor, and how hygiene is important for the whole society, and how hospital, healthcare, and we've seen the essential workers who have come forward in these, and how thankful, how much full of gratitude we are to the doctors, to the nurses, to the delivery men, to the grocery store fellows, to the essential workers. So the way forward, it's whether it is women who have been neglected for so many years in society, that 50% has to come to the forefront. We have to empower women, because without that, we cannot expect any progress and equality. And same way, the rich-poor divide has to go. And there have to be more facilities which are, more towards making the whole society comfortable rather than just one set of people, because that's the only way we can survive in the world of, because this is not the last of the pandemics, mind you. We've already been warned that there will be more. And the only way about it is an equitable, just, inclusive, and gender, all differences should sort of dissolve, and we must move forward on that path. So that's one paragraph which...
Such a hopeful note to end this session on, actually. Look forward to a world that bridges the gaps, and it's really important at this point that we're all coming to that realization now. Thank you so much, ma'am. This paragraph is, you've left me with something to really ponder upon, and I'm sure the audience feels the same way. I'd love to just take a moment to thank all our associates. I'd like to thank Shree Cement Limited for their pivotal role in promoting our social literal traditions nationwide. And I want to thank Hyatt and Mr. Harkaran Singh, the General Manager at Hyatt. So your presence means a great deal to us. I'm sure you are somewhere in the audience listening to us. So today we couldn't be at the venue. So Mr. Singh made sure that he brought Hyatt Hospitality to us. If I could just take this liberty of showing some Hyatt Hospitality, he sent it to all of us, the SAS women. I wish I could have sent it to all our lovely audience, but that was not possible. It was a surprise for me. So that is the kind of hospitality Hyatt always extends. Lovely gesture, Mr. Singh. Thank you so much for this thoughtful gesture. I extend a heartfelt thanks to Ms. Sonia Gulani. You were a total delight to listen to, ma'am. All the topics that you touched upon today, I'm sure would benefit our audience and listeners a great deal. A big thank you to Swati. Thank you, Swati, for your admirable efforts in moderating this session. You made it so enjoyable. The questions were so apt. I really enjoyed listening to you just as much. So a big thank you to you. And I'm sure you've taken a lot of effort, researching, reading up. So really, it means a lot to us at SAS. And I must express my deep gratitude for our ever interactive and rapt audience. Thank you for your time. Today's session has been a virtual treat. So until next time, thank you all from SAS Team Raipur.
Can I take 2 minutes to
Absolutely,
just say thanks?
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
So I would like to thank APRA and to Prabhat Khetan Foundation, to the SAS ladies, Aanchal, Kirti, and
Rishti and Kalpana, ma'am.
Rishti and Kalpana. And thank you, Swati. Your questions were really very interesting and great set of questions to sort of, enjoyed answering them. And thank you to all your advertisers. It was, and all the people who made time to attend the session. It has been really a pleasure interacting with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we hope to have you in Raipur City sometime, ma'am.
I hope so, really.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll really look forward to that.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.